Look, the Gates Foundation isn't just Bill Gates, you know. There's a board of trustees. Trustees, so you can trusty them. None of them benefit from the Gates Foundation, do they? What? 4.9 million glorious miracles descended here to the material plane to actualize ourselves in physical form, and here we are together. Are we going to get to that 5 million? When will it be? Does it make any difference anyway? It's just a number. That's not important, is it? What's really important is how the world is run and our ability to operate freely within it. And that can only happen if we have a transparent media, reliable government, and we don't have great big billionaire foundations hopping around the globe doing what they want and manipulating reality according to their will. And I'm not saying that is happening, but let's have a look if it is happening. It's happening. Right, so what this story is about is the trustees of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and whether or not they have any vested interest in the potential outcomes that the activities of that foundation could have. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has announced it will add 4 members to its board of trustees, a first for the philanthropic giant whose decision-making has been guided by very few hands since its incorporation in the year 2000. The foundation said it would search for new trustees in July after its 2 co-chairs and trustees, Bill Gates and Melinda French Gates, announced their divorce. The new trustees are described as strong independent voices to help shape our governance on a foundation press release. Right, so let's just remember that. Strong independent voices. Let's have a look. The group includes a billionaire, a baroness, a professional consultant, and the Gates Foundation CEO. Now, I'm not an expert in such matters, but even I, with my limited ability and relatively short period of education, suspect that the CEO of the Gates Foundation, for starters, is going to not be that strong and independent. As CEO of the Gates Foundation, I'll do everything in my power to make sure you bastards play by the book. Also includes a billionaire and a baroness. Shit! There's so much corruption and inequality and wealth transfer in the direction of the powerful. Get me a billionaire and a baroness. Now. As we look ahead, I'm excited to welcome our new board members. Their wide-ranging experience and expertise, being rich, will have an enormous impact on our ability to tackle the complexity of these challenges and bring us closer to realising a world where everyone has the chance to do what I tell them. No, to lead a healthy and productive life, said Gates. It's hard to find many groups in the public health community that are outspoken critics. They are such a powerful player that it's hard for people to speak truth to power to them, said David Callahan, founder of the Insider Philanthropy website and author of The Givers, Wealth, Power and Philanthropy in a New Gilded Age. So many of the people who may be critics of the Gates Foundation are funded by the Gates Foundation or would like to be funded by the Gates Foundation. Hey, are you going to criticize the Gates Foundation? Well, I'd like to, but I'm funded by the Gates Foundation. What about you? Well, I'd like to, but I'd like to be funded by the Gates Foundation even more. Won't anybody criticize the Gates Foundation? The foundation has no shareholders to bring accountability. It's not often that you cry out for shareholders to bring accountability to a business, but then again, this isn't a business. Is it? In theory, the new board serves to diminish the monopoly power that Bill and Melinda French Gates have as the only 2 trustees of the foundation, forcing them to share decision-making over the $50 billion private foundation with an independent group of outside actors. Yeah, but we already know one of them's not that outside. He's Job's there. See you later, honey. I'm going to go and do my thing where I'm a trustee of the Gates Foundation. Hi, honey, I'm home. Don't call me honey at work. In reality, however, the Gates appear to retain special voting rights as the foundation's co-chairs, which gives them veto power over decision-making, according to the New York Times' reporting. Like, even with their own mad board of trustees that they appointed themselves, they've still got veto power. I wouldn't have liked playing around their house when I was a kid. Right, everybody, we're going to do Twister. I don't want to do Twister. Vetoed! If you've got power of veto, the whole exercise is just like a play. That is not a typical board structure, notes Brian Gow, a law professor at Georgetown. It's a little bit more evidence that they haven't really embraced the idea of giving up much control. A little bit more evidence. I suppose what we're inviting you to observe is that these appointments smack of posturing. Bill Gates, over the last few years, has endured some criticism. He's endured criticism because of his funding of the WHO and the ability that gives him to shape the narrative around vaccines. He's also received criticism because of his funding of the media, which also would, in theory, allow him to shape the narrative. One additional concern is that some new board members come from Gates-funded organisations, like Tom Tierney from the non-profit consulting firm Bridgespan, which has received at least $32 million from the Gates Foundation. It's unclear how the foundation or taxpayers who heavily subsidise the foundation can expect someone in this position to be independent or to challenge Gates. These appointments of apparently independent people to fortify the idea that the Gates Foundation is separate and distinct from Bill Gates himself and is in fact only in the world to issue philanthropic grants and assistance, it starts to be challenged when the appointments made are for people that have received $32 million grants and Bill Gates and Melinda Gates can veto them when they want to. That means that the appointment of the trustees is irrelevant. It's an impersonative, performative process rather than a practical one, i.e. trying to change the impression of reality rather than reality itself. You could suggest if you're a person who had access to good lawyers. I don't have that kind of access. That's why I'm not saying that. The other new board members also have ties to the foundation. Can't you have one board member who doesn't have ties to the foundation? Yeah, but then they might argue. Yeah, but you've still got the veto. Yeah, but it's better to be sure. Baroness Minouche Shafiq is director of the London School of Economics, which has received $30 million from the foundation. Now, like, I see London School of Economics, I think, whoa, them dudes, they've got to know the score in economics. Of course they have. They've got to be a really good economics school, dealing with, empirical information and calculation and all sorts of fancy data. But if you get 13 million quid off someone, that will influence your opinion of someone. I think if Bill Gates gave me 30 million quid, I'd stop doing these videos. Strive Masiyiwa, the Zimbabwean telecom billionaire, also based in London, previously served as board chair of the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, a controversial initiative Gates has funded with at least $678 million. A controversial initiative? Well, that seems like it's something we should look at in more detail, but one thing I can tell you, if someone gets $678 million, I mean, that's bewildering, isn't it, for a controversial green initiative? It's hard to sit there on the board and get in Bill Gates' way when at the back of your mind is that baffling array of zeros. Perhaps the biggest question is whether Bill Gates, one of history's most storied monopolists, is capable of sharing power. In Gates' previous position, chairing Microsoft's board, fellow board member Maria Klahr recounts that he sometimes treated board meetings as a formality, summarily disregarding views that didn't agree with his own. No, I don't like that. Oh, Bill, I was thinking about more rights for veto. Hey, Bill, what about in the parking lot? Vetoed. Hey, Bill, should we get rid of that Microsoft paperclip? Vetoed. Like her idea of making the workplace more inviting for women. Vetoed! Don't make it more inviting. Leave it as inviting as it is. They had launched a press release saying how I would help them bring more women to help diversify Microsoft. Klahr, who left Microsoft's board in 2015, told The Nation. And then one actually suggested doing something on the board. It was absolutely zero openness from Bill. Shall we? Vetoed! As first reported by Business Insider, Klahr says that when she pushed the issue of diversity in women, Gates exploded. Are you trying to effing destroy my company? I can't imagine him even saying that, can you? When you see him on the telly in his jumper and that, and he's all sort of nervous and peeping out at it. Are you trying to fucking destroy my company? Bloody hell, no, you give me this job, I'm trying to help. Vetoed! Critics have long argued that the foundation, whose funding for the World Health Organization nearly matches that of the US government, has outsized influence and needs broader leadership. We're not talking about something with a little bit of power there, are we? The United States, they can match that. We are the United States with a long history and tradition, a government of 300 million people, and we'd like to donate that amount. We'll do that as well. Well, we're going to expect to be in charge. Vetoed! Gates himself was slammed by some global health experts last year when he defended stringent intellectual property rights as the best way to speed innovation, a move some saw as prioritising profits over vaccinations. So, if Bill Gates in that instance was prioritising his own interests over perhaps global health interests, there's a possibility that would happen again. And an authentic board of trustees would be able to regulate, influence and redirect that impulse. But one that is heavily tied to the same outcomes won't do that. So that means the appointment of this board is designed to make us sort of read a story. Oh, that's good. That thing with Bill Gates, maybe he's got too much power. That's been dealt with now by the board. But then you look at it and you think, is that going to happen? The Gates Foundation is the second largest contributor to the WHO. As of September 2021, it had invested nearly $780 million in its programs this year. Bloody hell, that's such a lot of money. That's such a lot of power, isn't it? I know people say, and hit me up in the comments below if you've noticed this, people say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory talking about Bill Gates, but that's someone who can give $780 million via, admittedly, a foundation to the WHO. That's influence. What do you think this is, this world you live in? We live in a capitalist corporate society. If you've got that amount of capital, that equates to incredible influence. That's not conspiracy. That's not saying I think he can fly around the world and he uses his mind to control people. It's saying he uses money to exert influence, how people do. For an intergovernmental organisation such as the WHO to be so reliant on private philanthropy, especially one whose leaders have personal interests and investments in healthcare, is problematic. For one, it gives a non-government actor an outsized influence on the development and health priorities carried on by the international organisation. While private foundations can be very generous, they also can be even faster than governments to change their mind about donations or more dogged in demanding that their funding is used for specific priorities over others. This is an important sentence. Private foundations' resources tend to be more dependent on the stock market and other investments and could have financial interests that run contrary to their stated missions. Right? Their stated missions are obviously philanthropic missions. It's a philanthropic foundation. But if their funding is tied to the stock market, that means there's a financial component to the way that they, of course, generate their money, i.e. they're tied to trade. They're tied to particular industries. So what that suggests is this move to incorporate new board members, none of whom it seems have any real power, certainly none of them have the veto power that Bill Gates have, is a more of a performative gesture. We've already heard, haven't we, from Bill Gates? We've done a video on it. We'll tag you at the end, saying there's going to be more pandemics. Now, this foundation has incredible influence over the WHO, which shapes the narrative. They have incredible influence over the media. They can make donations wherever they want to make them. So they can influence and make statements about, hey, this is what's going to happen in the future. They can shape future narratives. They can tell you what's going to happen in the future. They can prepare you for particular strands of investment. So it's really important that when they appoint a board of trustees, they're a board of trustees that are trustworthy. I'm not saying those individuals aren't trustworthy. I'm saying they've got such embedded ties to the outcomes that are favourable to Bill Gates, i.e. Bill Gates and the foundation having money to make donations of 600 odd million, 37 million, 12 million, that how can you get the very objectivity that you require at a time that you're being told there's going to be more pandemics down the line, where a particular set of people and interests are able to shape the response to that and the way that that's dealt with. And if some of the solutions are beneficial to partners and affiliates of the Gates Foundation, do you think that those narratives might be the ones that are promoted? Do you think stories that are antithetic to those narratives might not make it to the front line? We're not talking entirely about crime or corruption. We're talking about the way that business operates, the way that shared interests coalesce to create a state or to create an establishment. These are just questions that I have, but let me know what you think, because I think these are important points and I know you can understand them. Hit me up in the comments below if you think that's important. Private foundations' resources tend to be more dependent on the stock market and other investments and could have financial interests that run contrary to their stated missions. This has been the case for the Gates Foundation, which was once a big investor in fossil fuels. And it's true that some of Bill Gates' personal investments, which include farmland that sells its produce to fast food chains. I mean, this stuff needs investigation, doesn't it? This is something that you want to fully understand. Something with that amount of power, you don't need a performative gesture of a board of trustees. You want people like that, you know, like people from the street or from the town or from the community or from work. Like, what's going on now? I mean, what you want is transparency and openness in government, or in effect, organisations that have the kind of power and influence that governments have. Big tech companies, big pharma companies, foundations like the Clinton Foundation and the Gates Foundation. You know, this is the kind of stuff that we need to know about, because it sure as hell influences your life. But that's just what I think. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below if this is something that concerns you and how you'd like to see it regulated. Is it an issue of concern for you? Please let us know. Give us a like. Give us a subscription. We're chasing that 5 million crazily. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at this cheeky little guy and enhance your spiritual life over on the Awakening channel by watching this video too. Please sign up to my mailing list so I can tell you about live shows that I'm doing. I'm all over the country. Give us a little click. Come and see me live. Most importantly of all though, stay free. Vetoed!